All right, guys, we're going back, way back to a time when the only way to get a little raunch in your life was to sneak into the basement, pop in a VHS, and pray your parents didn't walk in. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The late night 80s movies that didn't give a damn about being appropriate. I mean, these movies were loaded with everything like sex, parties, nudity, and all the stuff that made teenage life feel like we were getting away with something. So today, we're counting down to the raunchiest, wildest, and most unforgettable 80s movies that we loved watching as teenagers. And let's be honest, no way these could get made today. I mean, in the 80s, it was like, should we hold back? Nah, just throw it all out there.
The stewardess said both pilots.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Doctor, I've checked everyone. Mr. Stryker's the only one.
What flying experience have you had?
Oh, I flew single-engine fighters in the Air Force, but this plane has 4 engines. It's an entirely different kind of flying, altogether.
It's an entirely different kind of flying.
So let's start off with Airplane. Now, it's not the raunchiest, but it did push the envelope for its own ridiculous way. I mean, the jokes came at you faster than that plane in a nosedive. I mean, where else are you going to find random topless women running around the screen in the middle of an airplane disaster movie? I mean, it's like the creators are saying, oh, you think this is just a parody? Boom, here's some nudity to spice things up. And how could we forget the infamous blow-up autopilot scene? I mean, that wasn't just innuendo. They went all the way with the gag. I mean, it's still hilarious. And man, as a teenager, that was just golden.
Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid.
All right, my next up is Catty Shack. Now, this one is less about the sex and more about the party. But damn if it didn't give us one of the best casts of all time. I mean, we've got Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, and Bill Murray. These guys weren't holding back on anything. The jokes, dirty. The girls, super hot. The pool scene, well, let's just say that every guy watching was jealous of those caddies. Plus, who could forget the floating candy bar bit in the pool? Somehow Catty Shack managed to be raunchy, off-the-wall comedy, and a classic that still holds up.
Nice beaver.
Thank you. I just had it stuffed.
Let me help you with that.
The Naked Gun. No, this one just took absurdity of Airplane and just cranked it up. Leslie Nielsen's deadpan delivery made the raunchy humor just like that much funnier. I mean, you remember the scene with the full body condoms? I mean, as a teenager, man, I couldn't stop laughing at that. It wasn't just innuendo, it was just flat out ridiculous. And somehow it worked. I mean, today, a movie like this would probably get flagged just for how unapologetically dumb the humor is. But man, this was a gem.
This year's Prom King is Peyton Nico.
Congratulations, Peyton.
Thank you, Renegade. I'd just like to say, it's been a great year.
All right, guys, Zapped. I mean, this movie was straight up a teenage boy's dream come true. Scott Baio gets these telekinetic powers, and of course, what does he do with them? He undresses girls, messes with the bullies, and basically lives out the fantasy of like every 15-year-old dude in America. It's like, if I had powers, I'd probably do something useful. Nope, not Scott Baio, and honestly, I loved him for that. Thank you, Scott.
Don't forget, the candy store is the home of a special drink. It's called the Spring Break Screamer. 1 part vodka, 2 parts rum, 3 parts gin.
Toto? I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
All right, now we're going to get into Spring Break. Now, this one had all the perfect pieces. It had sun, sand, and women in bikinis. It was just one giant beach party with just tons of beer, tons of babes, and like zero plot. But let's be real, and we weren't watching it for the story. This was one of those movies that made like every teenager fantasize about ditching school and just heading straight on down to Florida.
All right, honey, what took you so long, baby? Come on in here. Daddy's been waiting for you. That's it. It's peek-a-booby time.
I bet you all forgot about Private Resort. Oh yeah. I mean, this one had like Johnny Depp before he was that pirate. And it was all about, you know, sneaking around, ogling the women, and getting into like ridiculous situations at a luxury resort. I mean, think Spring Break, but in a fancy hotel with a lot less sunburn. Plus, it had a really good mixture of slapstick humor, and I mean, let's just say there was plenty of eye candy. This was just primo 80s, and we all wanted to be Johnny Depp in this movie.
On, Chuck. Ooh, here we are. Ladies. Down boy. Down boy. Here you go. Good boy.
Up the Creek was one of those movies where you thought this could only happen in the 80s. And it was this raunchy comedy about college dudes in a river rafting competition. And of course, it's packed with beer and boobs and bad decisions. There's even a bit where they like rig a beauty pageant because why not? I mean, totally absurd. But at 16, it was like watching the ultimate college fantasy. And I'm not gonna lie, this one made me briefly consider learning how to whitewater raft. Just in case.
Gary? By the way, why are we wearing bras on our heads?
Ceremonial.
I mean, next up we've got Weird Science. I mean, come on, man. Those two dudes who create the perfect woman with a computer. This was every guy's dream in the mid-80s. Kelly LeBrock comes out of nowhere, and suddenly the geeks go from nobodies to like the kings of the school. It was like a teenage sci-fi fantasy come to life. Girls and gadgets and explosions. But, you know, let's be honest. There's just no way this movie would fly today. But back then, Weird Science was a classic. Plus, I mean, it taught us that maybe messing around with your computer could pay off in ways you never expected.
Check out these windows. Glass? Glass, yeah. But we can see out, and nobody can see in. Watch. Oh, watch. Okay, here we go. Hey, yo! Right here! Right here, buddy! Hey, look at this! We got teenage girls!
All right, we got to talk about Night Shift. I mean, this movie had Henry Winkler, you know, the Fonz, and Michael Keaton, I guess Mr. Mom, running a brothel out of a morgue. I mean, let that sink in. It's like, how do we make a raunchy comedy even weirder? Oh, yeah, I know. Dead people. and Keaton was at like his manic best in this one, and basically running around like a coked up genius the whole time. This was raunchy and smart, which is a hard combo to pull off, but man, this was just so much fun to watch. So let's talk about the wildlife, which basically was Fast Times at Ridgemont High's little brother. I mean, this was all about partying and girls and chaos. Plus, you had a young Chris Penn who was running around causing trouble, kind of like he does in his regular life. And it's just one of those movies where there's like not much plot, but who even cares? There were just plenty of parties, plenty of shenanigans, and just plenty of moments whereas like, you know, with teenage guys, I'd totally love to live like that. I'm just saying, if you didn't want to be at one of these parties, we couldn't be friends.
My friend Rag here, he's multilingual. He's flipping you off in 48 languages.
All right, now we're getting into the real meat of things with hard bodies. This movie was exactly what the title suggests. Hot bodies, a beach, and dudes doing everything they could to score with the women. The entire plot? These guys hire a young stud to teach them how to pick up girls. Yeah, that's the movie. And as a teenage guy, it was like the Bible on how not to impress women. But we loved it anyways. Somehow this movie made you believe that with the right amount of cool, anything was possible. Just a quick spoiler. It wasn't.
Yield the floor to Miss Newhouse, who, for reasons I don't pretend to understand, has been elected to make the farewell remarks on behalf of the graduates.
So let's talk about Private School. This movie was like 100% about teenage hormones. It was about boys sneaking in the girls' dorms, tons of, you know, no clothing on, and Phoebe Cates doing everything. I mean, Phoebe was like legend after this movie. Guys were practically falling out of their chairs watching her scenes. And let's just say, you know, Private School, it wasn't about the curriculum, and we weren't watching it for educational purposes, but I did learn a few things.
I know how much this meant to you, but I couldn't do it. Nothing happened, okay? I love Debbie. I made a promise to her, and I'm crazy about her, all right?
Hey, I understand. Don't worry about that. To tell you the truth, I'm envious. I wish I had someone that was in my every thought. Somebody I could spend all my time with. Somebody I could really respect. Hey, look at the cans on that bimbo.
All right, coming in strong with Bachelor Party. This was Tom Hanks before he was America's sweetheart. And it was literally an hour and a half of chaos. I mean, we're talking donkey, strippers, pranks, and all the debauchery you'd expect from a movie about a guy's final night of freedom. Tom Hanks running wild in this comedy, yeah, I mean, that's not a sight you forget. To this day, Bachelor Party is one of the funniest, most over-the-top movies I've ever seen. No way it would get made today, but damn, was it a blast. I mean, you knew this was coming, right? Risky Business. This is the movie where Tom Cruise went from teenage nobody to the coolest guy on the block. And let's be real, we all tried the underwear slide at least once, maybe twice. And this one had wild parties, hooking up with call girls, and the unforgettable Portia in the lake scene. I mean, the whole premise, it's a high school kid who turns his parents' house into a brothel. And as a teenage guy in the 80s, I was like, wait, you can do that? No way. But back then, risky business was every dude's dream and nightmare rolled into one. Oh man, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. This one is classic for just so many reasons. But for teenage guys, it was all about Phoebe Cates again. And in that pool scene, you know the one I'm talking about. The one that like everybody hit pause on. But beyond that, I mean, this movie was like a perfect snapshot of high school life. So, I mean, there was like the stoner wisdom and the wild parties. Fast Time was raunchy, hilarious, but like a little bit too real, if you know what I mean.
Where are they? I think they're talking about us. No way.
Man, Revenge of the Nerds was an all-out war between the geeks and the jocks. And let me tell you, those nerds did not play fair. They used tech to hack into the sorority house, set up the pranks, and yes, literally staged a panty raid. As a teenage guy, it was like watching a revenge fantasy come to life. All the underdogs finally winning by being, well, creeps, really. Sure, it's problematic as hell looking back, but at the time, it was like, oh, so this is what college is gonna be like? Man, did it make you wish it was. And the king of raunchy movies, Porkies. This is the granddaddy of like all of them. Every teenage guy in the 80s either watched this or knew about it. And the plot was basically pretty simple. A bunch of horny dudes trying to sneak into a strip club and peep on girls in the locker room. I mean, the shower scene alone was enough to make this legendary. You know what I'm talking about. Not only was this hilarious, but it was just naughty as hell. I mean, this was the kind of movie that made you feel like you were getting away with something just by watching it. And let's not forget, there were 3 of these. It's like they knew exactly what we wanted and just kept delivering. Today, there's just no way this type of movie could be in the theaters, but back then, this was the holy grail of late night movies. And there you have it, the most raunchy, unforgettable, and totally inappropriate 80s movies that we loved as teenagers. I mean, from nudity to parties, these flicks were our late night education in all the forbidden stuff. Would they hold up today? Probably not. But back then, they were everything. Now, I'm sure I missed a couple of good ones. Why don't you tell me what I did wrong in the comments? I'd love to see what I missed. And if you like the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, maybe even subscribe, and definitely come on back because I want my Gen X people to stay wild and remember that there's just nothing like the 80s, man.